I have covered a lot of difficult stories, but every once in a while there's one story that stays with you long after you have finished talking about it. This is one of those stories. It begins on an ordinary Friday, Feb 12th, 1993, a normal day in a busy shopping center. Parents Niv errands, kids laughed, and nothing about that day seemed unusual until suddenly it was. In that crowd was a mother, dense bugler, holding her 2 year old son's hand. His name was James Patrick Bugler. James had bright blue eyes, a cheering grin smile, that kind of energy that fills a room. He was only two, but full of personality. You can still see in his photos that sparkle that makes you smile just looking at him. But in the space of heartbeat, he was gone. Dance let go of his hand just for a moment to pay for something at a butcher shop inside a shopping center. When she turned back, James wasn't there, just gone. What followed would become one of the most haunting and heartbreaking stories in modern British history, not just because of what happened to James, but because of who was responsible. Two 10-year-old boys. This is the story of James Butler, a cause that changed the United Kingdom forever and still leaves people asking how something like this could ever happen. When police first received the shopping center's footage, they expected to find a stranger, maybe some suspicious, someone dangerous, but instead, what they saw made no sense. Two children, barely taller than the toddler, walking between them. The grainy black and white CCTV shows James walking trustingly over small hands held by one of the older boys. You can't see fear on his face, not yet. Investigators parsed the footage, rewatched it again and again. Who were these two? Their names were Robert Thompson and John Venables, both just 10-year-old. Both had skipped school that day, but what they did instead would horrify the world. Over the next few hours, dozens of witnesses saw them walking hand in hand with James. Some thought they were brothers. Others assumed the older boy was helping a toddler find his mom. Nobody saw a threat, even how could they? I mean, they were just 10. Nobody imagined what would happen. By the time police realized that CCTV had captured, James and the two boys had already left the shopping center, walking away from step by step. What none of those witnesses knew was what they were watching just the beginning of a tragedy that would shake Britain to its core. What drove two children, not even teenagers, to do something unthinkable? And how did a simple day at the shop turn into one of the most darkest moments in living memory? But James first went missing. The response was immediate. Security guards sought the shopping center, shop owners checked under counters, and police were called within minutes. But for Denise, James' mother, those minutes felt like hours. She ran through counter, she ran through the mall, calling his name, James James, hoping he would pop out from behind the display or come giggling back like toddlers do, but he didn't. Within hours, local radio stations, TVs, all were announcing that a little boy had gone missing from the Strand shopping center. Police disturbed, left posters, and went up. The entire community joined in search. It's hard to describe what that weekend felt for those people. People stopped whatever they were doing just to help stranger, combed up the streets, calling for a child they had never met. Parents held their kids a little tighter that night. News stations began covering the story, and when police realized the CCTV image, that blurry photo showing James walking with two older boys, it sent chills through the country. Who were they, and what were their motives, and where they had taken him? For 2 days there was hope. Hope that James would be found safe, wandering somewhere confused but unharmed. That maybe it was just a misunderstanding and he would be somewhere okay. But as hours dragged on and search extended further from nearby stations to other towns, then came a Sunday, Feb 14, 1993, a day Britain will never forget. That Sunday, four boys were playing near a railway station. They were just looking for their football while playing. They saw something on tracks, something small, something that shouldn't have been there. When police arrived, the scene told them what no one wanted to believe. James Bugler had been found. The discovery broke through the nation like a wave. Television broadcasts fell silent. News anchors struggled forwards. And across the UK, people wept for a boy they didn't know. Because it wasn't just the loss of a child, it was loss of something much bigger, the loss of belief that innocence could be safe. Within hours, the area was sealed off. Detectives began piecing together the time, life, tracking James' final steps from the shopping center to railway, and soon they found something that changed the investigators forever: the CCTV footage. Those two young boys were seen walking with James were no longer just a mystery, they were now the focus of a nationwide manhunt. The image of their faces, young and expressionless, were burned into public mind. Who were they, and how could they, at just 10 years, be connected to something so horrific? Nobody could comprehend it, not the police, not the public, not even investigators. Hardened by years of difficult cases, but as evidences came together, the truth would soon be revealed, and it would shock the world. The police had their suspects, two boys, no older than 10 years. But how do you even begin to investigate a crime like this when the accused are children themselves? The detectives faced questions no one wanted to answer, no one wanted to ask. What could drive children so young to commit such an unthinkable act? How could you treat suspects who are barely out of childhood themselves? 1 week of investigators, piece by piece, puzzle fell into place. Forensics witness statements, and most importantly, the boy's own confession. They confessed that they led burglar to a steep road near a railway station. One of the boys threw blue paint into burglar's eyes. They kicked him, stamped him on, threw bricks and stones on him. They forced batteries into burglar's mouth and may have even inserted some into his ends, though none were found. Finally, boys dropped a 10 kg railway fish plate on the burglars, resulting in 10 skull fractures. Pathologists concluded burglars sustained total of 42 injuries, none of which were fatal blow. Thompson and Venables led burglar across the railway tracks and weighted his head down with rubble. Their intention was for a passing train to strike him, making his death appear accidental. His body was hit by train after they left the scene. Forensics later revealed burglar had died before being struck by train. The trial held later that year was one of the most high profile and controversial in the history. The evidences was demeaning. The CCTV footage, the timeline, and testimonies painted a grim picture. It was a reality that these boys were capable of such cruelty. That's what was most shocking. Court found them guilty for the murder of James Burglar. They were sentenced to custody until they reached adulthood, youngest convicted murders in modern British history. For some, the verdict brought relief and a sense that justice has been served. For others, it raised a painful question about childhood, evil, and captivity for violence. For James' family, it was devastating, a nightmare that would haunt forever. And their terms of release were they were not allowed to contact each other or Bugler's family. They were prohibited from visiting that site. Curfews may be imposed on them, and if they breached rules, they could return to prison. They both had new identities which were protected. Venables again went in prison in September 2008 after a street fire fight. In 2010, Venables contacted prohibition officers after he feared that his new identity had been compromised at his workplace. Venables was attempting to remove or destroy hard drive of his computers. Officers felt weird and his computer was taken away for examination, leading to discovery of child sexual abuse material. On 2nd March 2010, Ministry of Justice revealed that Venables had returned to prison. On June 21, 2010, Venables was charged with possession and distribution of indecent images of children. He pleaded and was sentenced to 2 years. Later, he was caught for possession of cocaine. On May 2011, Venables was once again given a new identity. On 23rd November 2017, it was reported that Venables had recalled to prison for possession of more child sexual abuse imagery, sentenced 3 years and 4 months in prison. In later 2019, it was reported that British officials consider resettling Venables in Canada, Australia, or New Zealand. The burglar case didn't end just with a verdict. The legacy of James Bugler's story is a complex one. It's about loss and sorrow, yes, but also about the strength of a community coming together to face a tragedy. About a nation learning painfully that evil comes from the most unexpected place, and about the enduring hope that justice, however imperfect, can bring some measure of peace. I have told you the story of James Burglar, a little boy whose life was stolen in a way that still haunts us all. It's a story that forces us to ask the hardest question: how can innocence be shattered so early? Why do some children walk down darkest paths that even adults struggle to understand? And perhaps most importantly, what can we do to protect vulnerable? This isn't just true crime story, it's a human story about loss, about the fragile line between childhood and cruelty, about the echoes that one tragedy leaves behind in families, in communities, and in nations' memory. We remember James not just because of what happened to him or how his life ended, but because of his life he was meant to live, full of laughter, joy, and possibility. I hope that by telling his story, we honor the memory and remind ourselves to hold tighter the light we carry inside, because in face of darkness, that light, the innocence, the hope, the love is what makes us humans. Thank you for listening. This If this story moved you, please remember to be kind to those around you, because something behind a smile, there's a story we will never understand.